Welcome to this, and this will be a Q&A. As the title says, I had lots of actually good questions. So many that, some of them I will do on a later Q&A, about 3 or 4 of them, just I didn't think would fit on this video. So I took the ones that I liked the most and the ones that I thought would fit on a other video better, and I will save them for another one. But as always, if you have something you would like to ask or something you would like me to answer, email it to me here on YouTube. Do not put it in the comment section. Do not put it on my page, which, by the way, a lot of people have been asking. I will update soon. The reason why I have not been updating it is that, and I think I finally figured it out, YouTube was airing out on me every time I tried to update it. So hopefully I have that to where it's fixed, and it should be updated, I would guess, in the next probably day. Probably have it updated tomorrow sometime. So there is that. So with that, let's get on with the questions and let's go. I've noticed when Jarrett was world champion in WCW, Russo was having his run there as well. Do you think that Vince Russo still had his job in TNA despite low quality shows? And due to possibly that, Jeff Jarrett might still be grateful to Russo for being the one of the main event and a 4-time world champion in WCW. That's probably part of it, maybe. I mean, but I think the other part of it is that I really feel like they feel that he probably still adds something. What? I have no idea. But that he probably still adds something. He's probably still a good idea guy, and he might be the only guy they can find that's be willing to do it and work within what they want. That might be the other part of it, because he has left. He did leave TNA at one point, and then was brought back. So there is that, and trust me, when I don't think Jarrett was the biggest fan of Russo when Jarrett was in the WWF, and Russo was there. So it probably has a lot to do with a lot of those things, but keep in mind that, he did leave at one point. And I would imagine it probably has more to do with the fact that they really do feel like, well, he's proven he did it once, and maybe he can do it again. But who truly knows? I keep hearing people say that you should put guys like Brian Kendrick or John Morrison or Paul London or Evan Bourne in the main event. All the cruiserweight guys, and if you have them compete for the world heavyweight title, wouldn't it make it look bad, like having guys like Big Show and Khali in the mid card, but guys like Evan Bourne versus Brian Kendrick for the main event? Not necessarily. I mean, you have to remember at one point Shawn Michaels was seen as too small to be a world champion, and also Rey Mysterio, I think, is a guy that people would see as a legit champion. Chris Benoit, who we're not supposed to talk about, him as well, Eddie Guerrero, guys like that. I don't think it's a big deal. Evan Bourne might be a little on the small side, I would say, but I think it all depends on how you use them, and that's the biggest thing. And can you put them over to the point where people think they are legitimate? That is the other big thing. So there you go. Do you think if the WWE hired a group of writers for each title, titles would be more prestigious, like having wrestlers come in, especially for the IC or US title or tag division? Do you think it would work better for TNA's X division, or have separate writers? No, because it has nothing to do with having separate writers. It has to do with making time for those belts and giving those belts time and giving new wrestlers going for those belts time. It's on the show to make the matches mean something. And you can have all the writers you want, but if you're not going to do that, then it doesn't really matter. So there you go. Dear T-Slayer, I love your vids, but I was wondering, what is your opinion of Brian Pillman? Do you like him, hate him, and do you think he'll get into the Hall of Fame one day? I don't really think. I personally always liked Brian Pillman, and I don't know if he would ever get in the Hall of Fame. The only way I could see him getting in the Hall of Fame is if you inducted him, basically saying that he helped usher in kind of the cruiserweight division for WCW. That's the only way I could see you maybe getting him in. But if you're going to do that, then, I mean, wouldn't you say Ricky Morton would probably have to go in before him? I mean, if you were going to do that sort of thing, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer just because he wasn't around long enough as a top guy to be a Hall of Famer. So there you go. Dear T-Slay, I love your vids, I don't know. Already read that one. Let's go to another one. Who would you select as the next ROH World Champion? You dethrone Nigel McGuinness, and why? I know a lot of people would say Tyler Black because he's the guy that's been pushed to that way, but I would be a little different because I think that, particularly for Ring of Honor, because they don't have a lot of great heels, that a heel champion would work much better. And for that reason, I would say Jimmy Jacobs, just because I think Jimmy Jacobs would be, I think it would work with his character better. I think him is kind of a heelish heel, I would think he could probably even be a bigger heel than Nigel McGuinness. I don't know if people would go for it, but that's kind of how I would do it. But that's just me. Hey Truthslayer, on your No Way Out 09 review, you said it was a good thing Finlay and Swagger slowed down the crowd. Do you think every match on a card should potentially be 5 stars, or is it better to have matches that aren't as good so the crowd won't burn out? It all depends. I mean, you don't want, you want to put on good matches. Don't get me wrong. You don't want to put on, you don't want Finlay Swagger. You still want a good match, but you don't want, and you can have a great match still after a great match and it not burn out the crowd as long as it's slowed down a little bit and isn't, spot happy. You don't want like spot fest, or fast-paced match, then you have a tendency to wear out a crowd, i.e. what Gabe Sapolsky often did in Ring of Honor. However, you don't want to, so you do have to keep that in mind, particularly if you realize that the crowd response is important and you don't want to burn out the crowd before the main event. So, there you go. In both Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper's autobiography books, they bring up that in the first WrestleMania, Mr. T arrived several hours late and threatened Vince McMahon that if he didn't let his friends have front row seats, he'd refuse to do the show. That being the case, why did McMahon bring him back next year for the boxing match with Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 2? I would imagine because he knew it was going to be money, it would make money, and even with all the headaches, it would probably be worth it. So there you go. I've always liked the old King of the Ring pay-per-view, which was tournament style, and at the end, a new king was crowned. I know I don't like the actual king gimmick anymore, especially thanks to Booker T, but do you like the pay-per-view? Do you think WWE would ever bring back that pay-per-view? If WWE did bring it back, don't like the idea of being crowned a king, but what if the winner got a title shot at SummerSlam, like the winner of Royal Rumble gets at WrestleMania? I wouldn't mind that at all. It used to be that, for a while, I can't remember how long, but for a while it was that the winner of the Royal Rumble would get a shot at the champion at WrestleMania. I think one of the things was that I felt it kind of devalued the Royal Rumble, but I think now you get away with that by saying, you've got 3 shows, you basically have guys from each show, and the guy that wins, they get a title shot for their show, not necessarily for any title of their picking like Royal Rumble would be. But I think you could do that. I always love the pay-per-view. The problem the WWE doesn't like about it is they feel like it messes up where they want to go. They feel like they have to put certain things on the side. They just don't feel like they can book it very well. And they think that it gets in the way of booking the way they want to do things. I don't agree with that. I think you can work around it, but that's the way they feel about it. So there you go. I've always looked at the, let's see, I read that already. Hey, Truth, I remember a year or so ago you kept saying that Robert Roode was not impressive and you were not into him, and I agree. Now after teaming with James Storm and Beer Money for a while, I must say that I am much more into him, and even you seem to enjoy him more. Do you think this could lead to Roode being seen as a more legit single star in the future, or do you really believe that he's being carried more by Storm? I wouldn't say carried by Storm. I would say that they are both much better together than they are apart. I still have I still don't want to see Robert Roode by himself. I will say that. I think that they work very well off of each other, and so I think that is why I enjoy it more. I think it's one of those things where they're better together than they would be apart. So there you go. I don't understand your view on shoot interviews. You have said that you don't like them because it's hard to get the whole story. I feel that shoot interviews are much better than the newsletters, internet, because we are hearing from people who were backstage. Of course, you can't get the whole story. Everyone has a view. At least we shoots, the news and views come from people who are backstage involved, unlike the newsletters and internet. It's true, except that here's the thing. When you're getting stuff off newsletters and the internet, there's really only two that anyone ever really gets their news from, and that's the Observer and Pro Wrestling Insider. Those are the only two. They've been around forever. They almost always get the story right. Even stuff that people didn't think that Dave Meltzer got right, he wound up getting right. So that's so much more than guys who were supposed to have backstage knowledge because they were backstage ever got it right, because guys are going to protect the guys. My problem with shoot interviews is not that you don't get the whole story, it's that the guy's interviewing them. They'll ask a question, they let them answer, then they never ask a follow-up question. Rob Feinstein is horrible at that. And that's why I do not understand why people buy his shoot interviews, because he'll ask a question, he never asks follow-up questions, almost never. Sometimes he does, but he almost never asks a follow-up question, and it's really annoying. He's a horrible interviewer. You would think that with all of the money he's made, and lost, but all the money he's made, he would go out and, do something better than that. But anyways, here we go. Hey, Truthslayer, do you think that if Randy Orton goes over at WrestleMania that he would be promoted to a megastar status like, say, John Cena or Steve Austin? Do you think Triple H would put him over? I think Triple H would put him over, and I could see him going over for them hoping to build more of a heel version of Steve Austin, and that you have this guy who's a heel who's going against the family, the McMahons, with the hope that maybe you could turn him face at some point by doing that. But that's the only way I could see it doing it. I don't know if he's going to go over at WrestleMania or not. I think it would be a good idea, but I'm not sold on it yet. So there we go. Back in the early 90s, WCW had a top 10. I guess it is similar to the present BCS or NCAA rankings. I know the WWE has the Power 25, but it really doesn't matter when it comes to storylines. Do you think that the WWE or TNA could use this to determine the number one contender for every pay-per-view? I also think that every match on television would be more important, as it would impact a wrestler's rankings. TNA would also use this to firmly set itself apart from WWE. I would have no problems with that. You probably have to get creative so that it's not the sole determining factor with some storylines. You would have to continue, if you were going to have a continuing feuds, maybe that would go 3 or 4 pay-per-views, you'd have to continually explain why, this guy was still ranked number 1 because, whoever decided that, it wasn't a fair ending or whatever. You'd have to get kind of creative. But there's nothing wrong with that, and I do think that it would make matches seem more important, and I think that part of it would be good. So, yes, I would have no problem with that at all. If I'm asking this at the wrong time, well, I'm sorry, but Raw last night was stupid because of one announcement, and that was that Edge will defend the title against Big Show. I was pissed at that. I mean, they could have done John Cena, but no, they had to go with Big Show. I just wanted your thoughts on this because I would make it into a rant. You might agree with this. If you have time, can you make a video responding to this? I will say this. Well, first of all, I doubt we're going to see actually Edge versus Big Show. We'll probably see Edge versus Big Show versus Cena. That's it. Every single person that's bitching about this, a lot of you were the same people bitching about that we were going to get Edge versus Cena. And we saw Edge versus Cena, so you wanted to see something different. Well, guess what? Big Show versus Edge is different. And you still don't want to see that. And I imagine most of you don't want to see Edge versus Big Show versus Cena either. I don't want to see that. I don't think any of you want to see it either. I think it was a big mistake. Apparently WWE did it because they did feel that, well, Edge versus Cena had been done far too often, which I think is a bunch of crap. Because they put on good matches with each other. And really it was with injuries and the way everything played out, it was really the only way they had to go. So there you go. End of story. Done. Hey, T-Slay, I was just wondering if you feel that certain wrestlers need a manager to help develop their character and make them look more interesting. Prime examples would be Kane and Abyss. When they were managed by the Sinister Mr. and Paul Bearer, respectively, Kane and Abyss would hardly say anything, and their managers would act as spokesperson for them. This helped to develop their gimmick of being cold-hearted, destructive monsters. I completely agree. I think that managers are something that are sorely missed. You definitely have guys who aren't good on the mic or just cannot get over by themselves, and they need something to help them get over. They need a manager, not just a valet, not just a pretty face. They actually need a manager, a guy that can go out there, or a woman, because there's women that can do the same thing. Go out there and better on the mic, get the guys over, do all those sorts of things. We don't have that now, and I think it is a complete joke. So there you go. A question, actually from Oliver Scott, actually from the Oliver Scott account, and not from the Chain Gang member account. So that is surprising. What are your thoughts on Don West's epic heel turn? I do agree it was epic. I liked the original turn from last week's. The one from this week's, not so much. Though I liked it at the start, when they started out the show and Don West was talking and then he went off again on another little rant. Though I did think the whole thing made Mike Tenay look more heelish than Don West. And then I really, really started cringing when Don West tried to play up the whole, him being a heel. That's kind of what they're going for, is trying to have Don West be a heel and Mike Tenay be the face, and I just don't think it worked very well, but there you go. But the original turn, I thought, actually was very well done, so there you go. In your last Q&A, a Hustle and Chikara comparison was mentioned, so my question to you is, do you think DDT is more similar to Chikara, considering Hustle is more over the top and have more star power? See, I think DDT is just as over the top as Hustle is. I mean, DDT does just this crazy, wacky stuff. Probably, considering the culture, DDT probably is closer to Chikara, considering the culture. But if you were just going to compare DDT and Chikara, DDT is still wackier and more messed up and has more crazier crap than Chikara will ever have, I would imagine. Maybe even more than Hustle, at least from, a Westerner's view of it. But, there is that. And the last question, just curious, who do you enjoy to hear shoot on wrestling and why? I'm guessing you mean shoot, interviews. I'm guessing that's what you mean. I hope that's what you mean, because that's what I'm going to answer. That would be one, Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette is the guy that I like hearing the most, because he's very insightful. I agree with most of his opinions. That helps, of course. And, he usually knows his stuff, and he knows his history. I would recommend anybody to check out any of the ones he did for ROH, as I thought they were excellent and wonderful, especially the ones where he was interviewing guys. Those are amazingly just wonderful, and puts pretty much to crap. And a lot of people probably think I'm being biased because I don't like RF Video or Rob Feinstein, but honestly, I do think that ROH's straight shooting series was actually a little better. Actually, I think a lot of them were a lot better than a lot of the RF stuff. Yeah. So, there's what I would say with that. I'm not a big fan, as most people know, of Rob Feinstein at all. That's why the video that's on my page right now is up. If you were wondering why that was up there, that is why that video is up there. And, so I'm not a big fan of his, and, to start with, and I don't think he does. I don't think RF releases very good shoots. They release a lot of shoots, but I don't think a lot of them are very good, for various reasons. But I think the ones Jim Cornette has done have been utterly amazing and very insightful and all of that sort of thing. So there you go. And with that, I am done. I hope you all have a good one. I am out.